Gitche Manitou by Maria de Los Angeles Virgen. Chapter 1. The Dream. The desert night was a canvas of heat and rebellion, a barren expanse where the air shimmered with anticipation. Cacti stood as silent sentinels under the bruised sky. The last sliver of the sun dipped below the horizon. It was time, I thought to myself, in determination of seizing the night. The primal energy built around me as I laced up my black leather moccasins. The soft material hugged my feet with familiar comfort. My friends were nearby, a ragtag group of misfits and dreamers, all drawn together by the siren call of anarchy in the form of hard punk rock music. The makeshift stage was nothing more than a battered pickup truck, its bed piled with speakers that crackled with promise. The first chords screamed into the night, electrifying the atmosphere. My heart pounded in sync with the thundering bass, a wild rhythm that urged me forward. I plunged into the mosh pit, a writhing sea of bodies that collided and surged with unrestrained abandon. The desert air was a furnace, every breath a searing gust that burned my lungs. Yet, in this cauldron of chaos, I felt alive, every nerve ending sparking with raw exhilaration. I pushed against the bodies around me, a primal dance of aggression and camaraderie. The music was a living entity that filled me with an uncontainable energy. A shove from the girl behind me brought me face to face with a guy whose shoulder was bleeding. The crimson streak was narrow and straight, as if someone had put it there with the fine bristles of a paintbrush. I stumbled, and the metallic tang of blood brushed my lips. For a heartbeat, time froze. The taste was electric, a jolt that shot through me like lightning. My senses sharpened. I could feel his heartbeat, a steady drum that matched the pulsing music. An inexplicable hunger unfurled within me. The urge to bite was all-consuming. I could hear the river of blood beneath his skin. My vision narrowed, focusing on the pulse at his neck, every instinct screaming at me to give in. Then, cutting through the delirious haze, a piercing screech split the night. My head snapped up and I saw it. A giant white barn owl, ghostly against the dark sky. Its wings spread wide as it hovered above the mosh pit, eyes glowing with otherworldly light. The owl's call resonated deep within my soul. The primal hunger ebbed, replaced by a profound sense of awe. As it swooped low, its feathers brushed against my cheek, cool and soft like a whisper. The supernatural encounter grounded me, pulling me back from the brink of something I could not fully comprehend. The music still roared around me, but now it felt different, less like a call to chaos, and more like a celebration of life's fierce, unyielding beauty. Suddenly, I was alone in a dark cave. My ears started ringing tremulously as the last remnants of the punk song ebbed down. Silence filled the air around me, and all I had were my thoughts to remind me that I was even alive. Then I woke up. I hurriedly scribbled down the fragments of my dream before I woke up too much and lost it. The details were already slipping away, but I knew this one was important. I had only meant to take a short nap before heading out to a party, but this dream, it was different. It was vivid, surreal even, the kind that clung to the edges of your mind long after waking. I finished writing it out, transforming it into an essay that I had forgotten I needed to complete for school. Creative writing, my favorite class. The assignment had been to focus on imagery, and this dream gave me more than enough material to work with. The scenes, the sounds, the emotions, they were all so intense. But then again, I was no stranger to intensity. Since being diagnosed with bipolar disorder years ago, My life has been a constant swing between extremes. It seemed almost cruel that, even in my sleep, I couldn't escape it. My soul screamed in vivid colors, whether awake or asleep. Still, I have a finished essay now. Mrs. C would probably love it. I could already imagine her reading through it, looking for the adjectives and metaphors I'd packed in like ammunition. She always told us to focus on description, on making our writing feel like our words were alive. Well, I'd given her everything I had. If she didn't give me a good grade, I wasn't sure I had any more synonyms to throw at her. I yanked the paper from my old brother typewriter and placed it neatly in my binder. It felt satisfying to have something completed, even if it was just a school assignment. Then, with that out of the way, I stepped back into the real world. The night was still young, and there was energy in the air. I could feel it buzzing as I hopped on my bike and pedaled toward the outskirts of town. The Freaks, a local punk band, had already finished their set, and though I had missed them, it didn't really matter. What mattered was catching up with my friends. A large group of us had planned to escape the dusty streets of our town and head to the pit, our spot in the desert where no one could bother us. No parents, no rules, just us, the stars and the open sky. I rode my bike down the familiar back roads, the wind rushing past me. The pit was a secret, a place that only we knew how to find. It was wild and free, much like the people I hung out with.
"Yo, Mags!"
yelled out the baddest-looking punk girl named Sel. She pulled up next to me in her father's old beater truck. Manda was with her, smoking a clove. The smell of cloves was always a delight, but I didn't care about smoking personally.
"Get in, girl, before you mess up that pretty skirt of yours,"
muttered Manda loudly with no emotion. She was a blonde version of Wednesday Addams. I threw my bike in the back and squeezed in.
"I thought you were getting a ride with Ray-Bons,"
asked Sel. I just sighed and stared out the window.
"Trouble in paradise, eh?"
she asked as she took off down the dirt road, causing a bellow of dust to fly behind us. "I wouldn't call it trouble," I said finally. "I'm just bored."
"Boys are boring,"
Manda spat out, and we laughed as we blasted music on the way there. The pit was always at the same designated area out in the desert near our small town. There was only one dirt road that led back into town from there. It was ugly, barren, flat, and in between two large farm plots, but it was our paradise. We didn't need much, just some drinks, the desert, and each other. The moon hung high in the sky, full and luminous, reigning like a queen over the night. She cast her silver glow over everything, making the world look softer, almost magical. A few dark, brooding clouds drifted across the sky, wrapping around her like swirling robes. Tonight, something felt different. A strange pang settled in my gut as I gazed up at the moon. Tonight felt sharp and restless, as if the air itself was vibrating with tension. Was this going to be one of those sharp note nights? The kind where everything inside me buzzed with untamed energy, where I hungered for release of something wild. Images flooded my mind, raw, primal fantasies of a time when humans were closer to beasts, when they hunted with their hands and tore into raw meat. Out of nowhere, I craved a steak, which was odd for me. Red meat wasn't something I usually ate, thanks to my foster mom's affinity for cheap cuts. But tonight, everything felt heightened, different. I felt hyper and uncontrolled, my own type of wild card. I started to head bang in the car as if I were in some mosh pit. As we neared the gang, we saw Moniker's car, the other blonde Wednesday, and we started to holler at her to squeeze into the truck with us.
I got some shrooms,
Giggled Moniker as she sat down and opened her little coffin purse and started handing them out. I refused as always. Something about constantly feeling on the verge of a mania made me fear myself. I felt I only had so much control over my emotions, but I did drink.
You're not gonna have any?
Moniker asked as if I just insulted her. You know, I only prefer the drink, I answered back in a deeper than usual voice.
Yeah, Dracula. More for us then.
She giggled as she took another mouthful. It was definitely a sharp note night. My emotions were jagged, electric, and on edge. That's how I always described my feelings, as musical notes. When I was on a flat note, I was calm and serene, but also a bit too lethargic. I could sit for hours, reading, painting, sewing, content to ignore the world around me. My lows weren't depression, they were just a kind of numb peace. A middle C was just about normal. This is when I was favorably medicated, but the sharp notes, those were dangerous. They were on the verge of something more, something manic and out of control. I've only been truly manic a few times in my life. The first was when I was 13. I didn't sleep for 4 days, hallucinating until a faint, mumbled voice started speaking in my head. I ended up in the hospital after that, diagnosed and medicated. Lithium became my new companion. The second time came a few years later, during my sophomore year of high school. That time was more of a blur, not as terrifying, but still intense enough to have my dose adjusted. I've been fine since, until tonight. This was different, though. This sharp note didn't build up slowly like the others. It hit me the second I stepped outside, like waking a monster that had been caged for too long. A wild, brutal urge surged through me, a call to the untamed, and for once, I didn't want to stop it. I wanted to let it out. I wanted to run through the canyons, dance like Cocopelli to my own rhythm, and feel the earth beneath my feet. I wanted to scream into the wind like a banshee, free and unrestrained. I wanted to be me, the real me, unfiltered and raw.
Light it, fuckface!
Rommel yelled, snapping me out of my thoughts. He was directing his usual venom at Ralph, who was standing lazily by the bonfire pile. The others had been tossing wood onto the growing heap, getting ready for our desert ritual.
Fine, damn it.
Ralph grumbled, pulling out a lighter from his worn leather jacket. He crouched down and set the bonfire ablaze.
Ralph!
Rommel teased, pretending to vomit as he mimicked the sound of Ralph's name. Ralph, of course, just rolled his eyes, accustomed to the teasing. That nickname had stuck with him ever since he'd puked at one of our past bonfires. A smile tugged at my lips. This was my crew, feral teenagers as wild and untamed as the desert around us. Skater punks, goth kids, metalheads, grunge girls, all of us outcasts. We didn't belong anywhere except with each other, and no one could fuck with one of us without fucking with us all. Even when I was in my middle C note state, I loved their chaotic energy. They were anarchists in the best way. And even when I pretended to be annoyed by their antics, I knew I couldn't live without them. Most of them saw me as a serious, quiet girl, thanks to the lithium that kept me in check. But inside, I was a force of nature held back by a dam. And tonight, that dam was about to break. The fire roared to life, massive and hungry. The flames licked the sky, dancing wildly as we howled and cheered. Someone turned on a radio and the Exploited blasted through the night, their raw punk energy fueling us. We moshed like we always did, jumping and slamming into each other without a care. Guys and girls together, it didn't matter. I was too drunk on cheap Strawberry Hill and adrenaline to feel the jabs and shoves. The ground felt soft under my feet as I pounded my new black knee-high moccasins into the earth. One of my friends had gifted them to me, and this was the first time I'd worn them. At first, I felt naked without my usual Doc Martens. Those boots were like armor, but the moccasins made me feel like I could dance in ways I never had before. I stomped and spun, mimicking the Native American dances I'd seen at local powwows, feeling more alive than I had in ages. But beneath the dancing, the drinking, and the fire, there was something deeper. That wild, primal urge still tugged at me. The moon's call wasn't peaceful tonight. It was fierce, demanding, and the sharp note inside me screamed for release. I didn't know what the dances were called or what they meant. I only knew that it felt good to move like that, to let the rhythm take over my body. Growing up, I never learned much about my mother's culture. She died when I was too young to remember, and all I knew was that I was half native from a tribe near New Mexico. I had never visited her reservation and never learned the language. After she was gone, I was swallowed up by the foster system, bouncing from home to home. Now, I told myself, I was my own person. My identity didn't need to fit neatly into anyone's box. Mixed, not mixed, it didn't matter. I didn't need to prove my roots to anyone, least of all myself. So, if I danced in a strange way, that was just what I did. A few of my native friends told me I was doing it wrong, that my dancing was too angry or too masculine, whatever that meant. It didn't bother me. I've always done what I wanted. Breaking taboos, it seemed like the one thing I was truly good at. As I stomped and spun around the fire, I felt the ground beneath me soften, almost like it was bending to the weight of my movement. The fire cracked and popped, sending sparks up into the night, and I happened to look up again, drawn once more to the moon. But this time, instead of the round, glowing satellite I expected to see, there was a large white nightbird. I froze mid-dance, my heart thudding in my chest. A powerful sense of déjà vu washed over me. High above, a giant white owl circled in a slow, deliberate pattern. It was mesmerizing. I couldn't tear my eyes away. Its screech sent shockwaves through my bones, rattling me to my core. It was the same as in my dream. I exhaled slowly, unable to look away. Just then, I felt a push from behind. One of my drunk friends had stumbled into me, sending me stumbling toward the fire. Time seemed to stretch out then, with everything slowing down to a crawl. The heat of the flames licked at my skin, and for a second, it felt like I was about to become some kind of gothic sacrifice to that owl spirit above. But my mind clicked into a strange clarity, and I moved without thinking, without hesitation. I twisted my body to the left, spinning in a perfect 360 over the flames as if I'd been training for this moment my entire life. It was instinctual, almost inhuman. I landed on my feet, my breath ragged. Then, out of nowhere, a howl erupted from my throat. A raw, guttural sound that I had never made before, something wild and primal, like it had come from a place deep inside me I didn't even know existed. The howl tore through the empty desert, echoing against the night sky, dissipating as fast as it had come, like shadows fleeing from light. I could feel its vibrations, slow and deliberate, as if I were giving birth to some kind of ethereal monster from the depths of my soul. When the sound finally faded, I was left with a strange pang of sadness, a deep emptiness that settled in my chest like a hollow weight. I stood there, frozen, waiting for something, anything to answer. I had half expected to hear a howl in return, as if what I had let out had been a call. A call to what or who, I didn't know. But there was only silence, and the feeling left me hollow, lonely. And then, just like that, the dam inside me didn't break. In fact, it snapped shut. That sharp note that had been building inside me, the wild energy that had been brewing all night, flattened in an instant, like a guitar string snapping mid-song. My mind went quiet, eerily calm, as if the storm had passed without warning. The sounds of laughter and music slowly came back into focus. My friends were still there, throwing back drinks and shouting into the night. It was like I had been yanked out of the twilight zone and pulled back into reality so fast it left me dizzy. I stood there, feeling the cool desert air on my skin.
Mags!
Ray-Bans yelled from across the bonfire, waving me over. He was perched on one of the haystacks from the nearby farm, leaning back like a king surveying his kingdom. Haystacks were everywhere in this place. Even though we lived in the desert, the farms around here grew alfalfa for the animals and many other things. The desert sun blessed this land with 2 growing seasons for that stuff. Because of it, my hometown always smelled like burnt hay and cow patties. A real delight, if you ask me. Ray-Bans had tossed his studded leather jacket over the bale, probably to keep the straw from poking through the holes in his ripped jeans. I wondered if he had heard me howl. Did I actually howl? I couldn't tell if it had been real or just something in my head. The fire crackled behind me and ignored backup singer to the chaos around it. My friends were still laughing and messing around as if nothing had happened, but I couldn't stop thinking about that giant owl. It had disappeared, and I half wondered if I had imagined it. It was too big to be a normal owl, and the screech was still ringing in my ears. It hadn't been an ordinary sound. It had felt like a wake-up call, but for what? I didn't know. I made my way over to Ray-Bans, sitting down next to him to try to clear my head. I had so many questions swimming through my mind, but no answers. And the more I tried to push those thoughts away, the more they burrowed into me, making it harder to enjoy the party. I wasn't feeling it anymore. The thrill of the night had dulled. As I sat there, I realized I was starting to sober up. It was one of my personal rules: never touch drugs, not with my bipolar disorder, but occasionally I would drink when my friends could sneak alcohol for me. Tonight I'd had my fill, thanks to the friendly neighborhood transient folks who were always willing to buy booze for some extra cash. But now, as the buzz faded, I was left wondering if any of what I had experienced had actually happened. No one seemed to notice me jumping over the fire. No one heard me howl, and no one saw the giant owl. Everyone was too lost in their drunken haze, but it was odd. How could no one have seen that? I looked around. Everything seemed normal. Shay was making out with Joe, some randos were fighting over the last beer they owned, and a few other couples were sneaking off to make out behind the haystacks. No one seemed to care, or even notice that I had performed some kind of freak show. Maybe it didn't really happen, I thought. Lately, I'd been hearing and seeing strange things, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Maybe it was time to adjust my meds, or maybe I was drinking too much. Either way, I could write a book about all the weird things that had been happening to me recently. Then, out of nowhere, Ray-Bans leaned over and kissed me. It wasn't unusual. We've made out before, but tonight, I wasn't in the mood. I pulled back, looking at him, his drunk smile plastered across his face, and felt nothing. He wasn't my boyfriend, and I didn't owe him anything. The attraction that had been there, just wasn't anymore. Without a word, I stood up, grabbed my bike from the back of Sel's truck, and walked away.
Oh, come on!
He yelled after me. I gotta go, I yelled back.
I thought we were gonna hang out afterward.
He said, trying to catch up to me on my bike. I think we're done, I stated, as I looked back at him with a serious look. Ray-Bans just threw his hands in the air and had a mini conniption. He was supposed to give me a ride home, his home where we usually made out, but I needed to be alone. I started pedaling down the dirt road, away from the music, the fire, and our breakup. The sound of the party, once so loud and full of adrenaline, was now just an annoyance, and I pedaled faster to escape it. My metabolism had always been fast, and alcohol never stayed in my system long. I was usually sober within an hour, which made drinking almost pointless.
Gitche Manitou by Maria de Los Angeles Virgen. Part 2 of Chapter 1 next. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. Ebook, paperback and hardcover of this book is available on Amazon now. Thank you for listening.